Now, and despite growing international pressure from the United Nations and Amnesty International for Singapore to make an amendment to some of its laws, the country insists that the death penalty is an effective deterrent against drug trafficking. 3 hangings were carried out in just over a week alone in August this year. George Quinning explores one of the world's toughest anti-drug laws and its diplomatic consequences.
In Singapore, trafficking more than 500 grams of cannabis or more than 15 grams of heroin can result in the death penalty. The capital punishment makes the island state one of the countries in the world with toughest anti-drug laws. On August 3, 2023, 39-year-old Mohammed Shaleh Abdul Latif was sentenced to death for possessing about 55 grams of heroin in 2019. He became the 16th prisoner put to death since the government resumed executions in March 2022 after a 2-year pause during the COVID-19 pandemic. The execution, the 5th hanging this year, comes less than a week after Singapore executed the first woman in nearly 20 years for drug trafficking, despite condemnation from rights groups. Thangaraju Supia, 46, of Tamil descent, on April 26, 2023, was hanged at dawn in Singapore's Changi prison after being convicted in 2018 of abetting the smuggling of 1.02 kilograms of cannabis back in 2013. As is customary, Thangaraju's family was given only 1 week notice before his execution. In 2022, Singapore executed 11 people, all for drug-related offences. According to advocates, at least 50 more people are awaiting their turn at the gallows, although the country has not disclosed the exact number of its death row inmates. In Singapore, there are mixed opinions about the capital punishment for drug trafficking.
There are other punishments that they can do, but in terms of execution, it's way too far. Even the Western country, they are trying to ban it. When you kill someone, they should kill you again. And talking about drugs, that is way too far.
And as a Christian, I don't believe any human being has a right to take the life of another person. But if you look at the other side of it, the repercussions of drug use and how it's destroying the lives of the youth of the world, sometimes it is up to a nation to make rules such that it serves as a deterrent for others.
I don't think it's harsh. I believe that every jurisdiction has its own laws, and if you break the laws in those jurisdictions, you have to face the consequences of it. I think anybody who comes in here knowing the death penalties and knowing the harsh consequences for specific things, know what they're walking themselves into. You could not possibly not know that you're coming into a place with drugs and not be executed. So if you take the risk, then you should be willing to do the time for it.
But Singapore is not backing down on a death penalty for drug trafficking, which has been described as barbaric and inhumane by some human rights activists. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says the country is reaping some significant gains from the laws.
Barbaric? Well, the Australian press is colourful. Many adjectives have been used. But we uphold the rule of law, and the rule of law has to apply impartially to Singaporeans and foreigners alike.
Singaporean Prime Minister believes untold misery and suffering to thousands of addicts and their families have been curtailed. Singapore's drug laws cannot be told without mention of the controversial execution of 38-year-old Nigerian Chijioke Obioha on May 23, 2023, following a lengthy legal process. Obioha, an industrial chemistry graduate from the University of Benin, had originally moved to Singapore in 2005, hoping to be a footballer. In April 2007, he was arrested for possessing over 2.6 kilograms of cannabis, surpassing the 500-gram threshold that triggers the presumption of trafficking under Singaporean laws. The execution took place just 2 days after the Singaporean government denied his appeal for clemency. Across the world, about 111 countries have completely abolished the death sentence for all crimes, while 53 countries still maintain it. In August this year, Ghana abolished the death penalty for ordinary crimes, something activists say is in line with international best practices. Ghana's law does not allow for the death sentence for a crime such as drug possession and trafficking, but previously, the crime was punishable with a minimum of 10-year jail sentence. In July this year, Ghana's parliament passed a Narcotics Control Commission bill to allow cannabis cultivation for industrial and medicinal purposes. The anti-drug trafficking laws in Singapore may have some positive impact that the government is touting, but could that mar the diplomatic relations it has with other countries across the world?
It has diplomatic consequences. In diplomacy, you give what you expect. So there is a serious reciprocity. And if Singapore is doing this to a country, they should expect that the country would really not be happy. It may, if they don't handle it well, it may veer onto other things, trade, you know, all kinds of relationship can break down up to diplomatic relationship. When you are doing these things and a country please, you might want to relax because of that specific country, not necessarily the law, but because of what you think you can lose.
Under Singaporean law, when there is a presumption of drug possession and trafficking, the burden of proof shifts from the prosecutor to the defendant. While there are concerns from rights groups like Amnesty International that Singapore may be violating international laws on implementing the death sentence, the country says it is determined to continue pushing its anti-drug trafficking campaign. But some citizens in Singapore hope the country will consider repealing the death sentence for drug trafficking. George Quinnin, TV3 News, Singapore.